Welcome into a new feature of the Scoop podcast. Still looking for a new name, folks watching this, but we're going to call this Inside Carolina Commitment Scoop with Don Callahan. I'm Tommy Ashley, of course, Inside Carolina's premier football analyst and national best in the nation, Don Callahan, school recruiting analyst for North Carolina. Going to talk a little commitment today. Or Sunday, April 16th, tight end Ryan Ward from Rutherford, New Jersey, committed to the Tar Heels, and Mack Brown said he was down to Virginia and Carolina, chose the Tar Heels. Don, tell us what we're getting here.
So a solid tight end, at his high school, he actually plays outside receiver, but he's not. I wouldn't put him in the same mold as like a Bryson Nesbitt or a Julian Randolph, who committed in the last class. Although they both played wide receiver primarily at their high schools. When I watch Ryan play, I compare him more back when he was also in high school to John Copenhaver. I think like they're very similar sort of guys. Thicker build, but I think that Ryan, tremendous receiver. You watch his film. The thing I guess that sticks out the most is he's so quick, twitchy, and he uses that to get open. And you can see a lot of creating a lot of space because of that twitchiness and catching a lot of balls that way. Really good after the catch sort of thing. So definitely a guy who will contribute in the passing game, but probably a little bit more of a run blocker, like Copenhaver has been.
Yeah, so more of a traditional tight end. That's what you're saying,
Yes. Yeah.
as
Yeah.
far
Yeah.
as quote unquote traditional
Yeah.
tight end. Yeah, 6'4" or 6'3", 240 ish. That's a big high school guy. Of course, he'll get to North Carolina and get a hold of some nutrition and strength and conditioning. Rated Composite 3-star, 800 ish in the nation listed. Just talk a little bit about how this went down. I know he was in Chapel Hill this weekend. How did he end up a Tar Heel, and who? What? Well, what other schools offered him?
Yeah,
Keep it
so
simple,
he
Tommy.
he was all over the place this offseason when it comes to visits, and what was great about him, what made my job a lot easier, was he tweeted out each of those stops, photos of those stops, that sort of thing, tweeted it out before he was going to visit and all that. So he ended up going to Army, Boston College, Iowa, Kansas, Nebraska, UNC, of course, Penn State, Pittsburgh, Rutgers, and Syracuse. He also visited a few schools during the fall and last summer, including Virginia. From those visits and from conversations with coaching staffs, developing relationships, so on and so forth, he narrowed it down to North Carolina and Virginia. Felt like it was important for him to visit those two schools one more time and then kind of make a final decision. He visited Virginia last Thursday. As you mentioned, he visited North Carolina Sunday, where he attended the spring game, and it didn't take him long to decide he wanted to be a Tar Heel.
So is this Freddie Kitchens at work? He specifically mentioned Mack and Freddie Kitchens after his commitment. Kitchens, of course, new tight ends coach, replaced John Lilly, and Freddie Kitchens also have NFL head coaching experience there. So is this what that is? Ward kind of maybe not known well to North Carolina recruitniks that follow you and all that, but lately Kitchens has been making his mark.
Yeah, I mean this played a part. Those who have interacted with Kitchens in any sort of capacity would tell you he's a great guy to talk to. Definitely can have a good time with him, sort of thing. Definitely the type of guy that you would want to have some beers with, sort of thing. So his personality seemed to definitely made an impact here. But I think ultimately, if you look at the schools that he truly focused in on, a lot of academic schools, coming down to North Carolina, UVA, two schools with great academic reputations. And I think ultimately that was probably the main factor. And then you kind of throw in some of the other stuff, like how prolific the offense has been in North Carolina the past couple of seasons under Mack Brown. And then, yeah, I mean, being coached by a former NFL head coach has got to also be appealing too.
Yeah, had offers, Boston College, Brown, Duke, Georgia Tech, a lot of academic schools, as you
Yeah.
talked about. So looking at it, you mentioned Randolph coming in this class, get to Chapel Hill this summer. Where does he sort of, I mean, it's going to be, they've got three studs currently,
Hmm.
tight ends, and some of those guys will be moving on by the time Ward matriculates to campus. But sort of the expectations, you mentioned Copenhaver as maybe a slight comp to him. I think Copenhaver could very possibly be TE number one this fall. Just looking ahead, I just love the way he plays. But just sort of it, any further details on where you see him fitting in? Is it, if tight end doesn't work, is a defensive lineman or defensive end type position work? You mentioned the quick twitch that he has. Just sort of how does Ward fit in on the whole at North Carolina?
So he starts both ways for his high school and his defensive position, his defensive end. So obviously that's a safe backup if you want to project. But I mean, North Carolina is definitely bringing him in as a tight end, and I I expect it to be kind of in that role because North Carolina plays the three guys, but they uses them differently, and I think he kind of would fit in that role that Copenhaver plays.
All right. Ward commits after a visit during Saturday's Carolina spring game. Don, there were a few other visitors there. Just sort of looking ahead, we are now mid-April. It is officially, quote unquote, the off season for North Carolina football. Just sort of break down a little bit before we get out of here on Ryan Ward's commitment. The next few weeks for North Carolina recruiting. Obviously, camp season starts. We get into a lot of movement as far as prospects and all that stuff. Historically are we in the process here at April 16th for North Carolina as far as commitments forthcoming, commitments down the road, offers forthcoming? Where do you see Carolina at this point?
So we actually have begun the spring evaluation period began on April 15th, Saturday. And so you'll see a lot of schools, you'll see coaches going to a lot of campuses. There's some important evaluation, particularly at the quarterback position, that North Carolina needs to do. It needs to be done in person. That's going to take place. A lot of checking in with some kids, also. Um, a lot of continuing what was being done back in January during that evaluation period. I expect the commitment stuff to slow down a bit. Maybe some guys who are ready to make decisions, they will kind of start to kind of make those decisions pretty soon. But the visits will slow down a little bit until we start up with the official visits, which really gets rocking and rolling in June. But official visits can actually start to take place this month and next. Most schools tend to try to push those officials until June, but you can definitely see some happening in May. Maybe North Carolina hasn't had any in April yet, and so I don't expect that to change. But because of the officials, a lot of kids at this point, if they haven't gathered enough information, they're going to wait to use those official visits to make their decision during the summer, which is basically what happened last year.
Yeah, interesting time to follow North Carolina recruiting. That's Don Callahan. Ryan Ward, Rutherford, New Jersey, becomes North Carolina's 10th commitment in the 2024 class. Joins several other athletes, offensive and defensive line, and some skill guys. Ward recruited as a tight end. Freddie Kitchens will certainly find a way to use him in the coming years. Don Callahan, I'm Tommy Ashley. Join us Wednesdays at noon for the Scoop Live. Still searching for a solid name on that one. Don, I look forward to talking to you each Wednesday, my man.
Absolutely. I'll see you then.